So, a very good afternoon to everybody, and many thanks for joining us here on the PPMA's Lunch and Learn session. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Chris Grimes and colleagues from Matrix. And Chris is going to lead us through a session about managing and dealing with agency staff during this time of coronavirus and the challenges that's brought and the benefits that some of those clients that Chris and his Matrix colleagues have worked with. And many thanks for tuning in. If you've got questions for Chris and colleagues, put them in the chat facility and Chris will pick those up at the end of his presentation. And also this session is going to be recorded, so for those colleagues who might want to access it at a more convenient time, please make sure that people are aware of it. And we'll also send a mail shout out to PPMA members. So once again, many thanks for joining. And with that, I'm going to say many thanks and hand over to Chris. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Lethan. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on the call, as Lethan said, to sort of talk through some of the things that we've done with our customers to sort of manage through the current sort of crisis that we find ourselves in. Noticed, obviously, when I checked the attendees yesterday, there were some familiar faces on the list, and obviously some new faces. So hello to everyone. Just briefly, for those who are not familiar faces and who don't know, that aren't quite familiar with who Matrix are and what we do, we are a managed service provider, of neutral vein managed service provider of temporary agency staff. We work predominantly within the local government sector and support a number of local authorities with their sort of contingent labour sort of requirements, sort of end-to-end requirements through sort of our neutral vein solution. On the call today, we've got Julian Panter, who's our business director for the London South. So Julian looks after a number of our London Borough customers and customers in the South. We've also got Roger Pellew from Hackney Council, who's very kindly offered to sort of talk through some real life sort of examples of what Hackney have done alongside ourselves. So I guess without further ado, I'll pass on to Julian, who will talk through some good stuff that we've done to date. And as Lethan said, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I'll try and work out the technology and file them to the guys at the end of the call.
Thanks, Chris. So hi there, everyone. I just want to say thanks to PPMA for asking me to be involved in this today, because I did an event with them I think last year, and it's nice to do something else again so soon this year. So just want to say thanks for that. So as Chris alluded to, I'm just going to be talking a bit about what we've been doing in terms of within London and some of our customers outside of London, in terms of how we've been managing obviously these testing times with coronavirus within the sort of public sector and with agency staffing. Obviously, I said if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll try and ask about. I know I'm under a strict time scale here. Before I pass over to Roger, and we've also got Stuart as well from Hackney on the call as well. So a big thank you to them for joining the call to obviously hopefully give an insight from Hackney. I thought what might be quite good is actually to talk a bit about, sort of like a timeline from obviously where there's the world pre-coronavirus to where we are now, because like myself and like probably all of you here, it's been a massive learning curve for us all. I'm not going to sit here and talk saying I know all the answers, but I certainly learned a lot over these past couple of months, and that's all from the education from within our customers, from our supply chain, and obviously the government in terms of their updates. So it's also about sharing the intelligence and sharing knowledge with each other. So I just wanted to start that off with that. So obviously before we went into lockdown, obviously there was obviously knowledge, there was obviously insight in terms of what was going on, and how we could protect people, agency staff, and a lot of it was information gathering at the beginning. So we were speaking to a lot of our customers, understand a bit about their policies, working from home, what if they put any special policies in place for those agency workers that maybe can't work due to COVID-19, whether it be self-isolating, temporary work closure. So a lot of it was information gathering at the beginning, even before lockdown. It was all more about how we can support the agency workers through these times. Like I said, there's 4 key ways in terms of work that may be affected by COVID-19. Most common one probably was temporary work closure, sickness, self-isolation, shielding. And one thing we took from that, from all this knowledge, from speaking to our customers and obviously understanding what process we should be moving forwards with, we actually were quite heavily involved with the framework, such as with M*3, with Jamie and David down M*3 and ESPO, and also with Lizzie and Lucy at YPO. Because one thing we wanted to do is understand that, well, what is the answers? What are the answers? How can we support agency workers and the supply chain during these times, even at a framework level? Because most of our customers are under one of those 2 frameworks. So we had to ensure we got those frameworks involved. And I'm sure most of you have seen, there's been some cabinet office advice which has come out about how we can support those workers and how to support agencies. Now, it's not essential that the public sector follow that, but it is strongly advised they do read those guidelines. And you know, that being that for those workers, they can pay up to 80% or 2,500 at the cap rate. It's not furloughing them, but it's supporting the workers if they've been affected by COVID-19. Why they released that is to why they help to support these workers and support the supply chains is a few reasons actually. One is about supporting the local workers, because you don't want them putting unnecessary statutory sick pay claims through the supply chain. Obviously the supply chain, there's a payroll costs as well. So it's supporting the local workers and supporting those agencies. One is actually, which has been quite a common one, especially for those that are on whether it be living wage or London living wage, has actually been avoiding workers coming in unnecessarily. So if a worker's made thinking they should be self-isolating, having that 80% pay or that to help support the workers may stop them unnecessarily coming in where they should be self-isolating, and essentially not spreading the risk. Another one, risk of losing the workers. Obviously some of these do have specialist skills, and it's helping make sure they don't risk losing the workers. And ultimately it's protecting the supply chain for the future, because there will be a time where we come out of these testing times, or they may not seem like at the moment, but it's protecting that supply chain. Luckily, we've had none of our suppliers have gone out of business or have certainly come close to coming out, so which is great. And a lot of our customers have actually embraced this guidance, or a lot of our London customers embraced this guidance, which is good. Following the advice, we, as with any other people, had to digest it, understand it, and making sure that we spent the time educating or working with our customers to come up with appropriate processes in place. Because ultimately, like I said, even though the guidance is there, it's strongly encouraged they follow it. It's not mandated. So we had to obviously spend some time with our customers to make sure they understood the guidance as a whole. And hopefully Hackney will, when I pass them over to them shortly, they'll hopefully emphasise that we did spend some time hopefully going through that and understand that a process which suits them and suits some of our other customers as well, because it's ultimately their decision, because the public sector won't be able to claim that money back, because it's not furloughing the worker, it's supporting the workers through COVID-19. One thing that a lot of our customers have certainly done in terms of taking advice is before looking at ways of where they can pay workers, is looking at reassignments. Luckily, the numbers have actually been quite small where people have been affected by COVID-19, certainly across London, which is good in a way. But a lot of the reason why is because there has been reassignment of these workers. A lot of these people have been reassigned to food hubs potentially, which has been really, really, really positive. So one thing I'll certainly emphasize on this is that people that have followed these guidance and advice, the numbers in terms of that have been actually very small. It tends to be some of those workers where they can't be reassigned potentially, like for example, if they work in rescues and they need to be shielding or self-isolating, they can't literally work that role and they can't be reassigned potentially. So that may be ways where they will be paying potentially the 80% rate to obviously support that work and that agency. So that's been one positive in actually using those workers for some of the other skill sets, and before even considering those options, which is something that I've certainly seen, and certainly our customers, I'm sure Hackney will say the same thing as well. One thing I'm sure that most of our customers would want to know if they do go down this 80% route potentially is understand how much that amount comes up to, because there will be they'll want management information, they'll want analysis in terms of how many workers, what's the cost been. It may not be now, but it will be some point in the future which I want that. So one thing we've implemented, a process change for us, is that we won't change anything on our technology system without their authorization. So if they have authorized that someone is self-isolating, they can't be reassigned, they'll agree to pay the 80% pay. We actually add a new rate type on our system, which is potentially be called COVID-19 self-isolating, and it has the correct rates. And then when their timesheets go through, it actually activates a report for us, so we can sort of report with our customers on how much they've spent, where and why over the past few weeks. And that's how I can sit here and tell you that numbers have been quite small, because we haven't had as much as I thought there would be, if I'd be completely honest with you, in terms of that spend across our London customers. And this is also while working with our supply chain. We send comms out to our supply chain to talk to them about processes, talk to them about the end client position, talk to them how they can raise if any workers have been affected by COVID-19. It's actually been, as I'm sure with everyone here, been quite busy times for us, which I'm grateful for, because it does take minds off things while we're all obviously adapting to working from home. So we do have those processes in place where we can report, we can manage it, we can control this as well. And ultimately, like I said, whether it be in a few months' time or years' time, we can go back and give that information if needed. So that's just obviously looking at existing workers as well. One thing we've also put in terms of process and how we've managed this during these testing times with our customers is actually looking at new orders coming through our system, and if orders would be down to a response to COVID-19. So we introduce a new justification on our technology when creating a new order, and using that new justification, which we've got as a response to COVID-19, and where we're reporting to our customers in terms of their demand, saying, has there been a peak in orders? Why has there been a peak in orders? What's the nature of why we are having agency staff? And to be quite frank with yourself, we've seen the number of new orders over the past few weeks certainly gone down, but when they have come through, they have been due to that justification. Because some of the market intelligence we're certainly seeing is we're seeing a lot of our existing workers stay extensions, and hardly not as many new workers coming through. My personal opinion, I think obviously people don't want to move at the moment, so obviously there's quite positive for existing customers, existing councils where they've seen retention of agency workforce and obviously not seeing people move, and that's why we've seen an increase in extensions. We're also seeing a different nature of workforce as well, where we've seen that quite a significant percentage of our agency workforce across London was senior interns or senior professional interns. We've seen that actually slightly reduce, and seen more in like frontline, like care qualified, cleaners, waste services. So even though it's been similar levels, it's actually been proportionally different now. It's only what we're seeing. I'm sure some of our customers that are on this call will probably agree with that. That's just how we've given a sort of a brief timescale in terms of what we've done in terms of managing COVID-19. One thing I did want to touch upon is how we supported Enfield and their local workers as well, which what we've done is we have a Enfield Council approached us, because obviously they've been, we know that a number of their businesses, local businesses, have gone through some difficult times and had to obviously either furlough or unfortunately make some people redundant potentially, or whatever it may be. And there was an opportunity there for local workers where they had some roles available at the council, care roles, roles in parks and cemeteries and registrars. So Enfield have put a link, which I'm more than happy to see if I can share and put in the chat with you guys, which shows a bit about, or Tom or Chris could do that while I'm speaking, that'd be great. which shows what we've worked with them and creating their link on their websites, which shows what people they need for agency and how they can apply. And that obviously website gets updated daily, because obviously it did have registrars on there. It doesn't now, so it's obviously clearly working. And obviously it's giving the local workforce, the local people in Enfield, the opportunity to see the available roles, and using our what we call our candidate demand sites, where they can then register with our a local supplier, our payroll service, where they can then be submitted to those particular orders to help them obviously support the local people of Enfield. And that has been a good success of ours, because it has been rolled out now to other customers, and we shared this with other customers as well. Thanks, Tom. And then, we have seen a success in that, and we certainly would want to emphasise that to any of our existing customers on here, if they haven't used that, to look at that as well, because it helps support local people if you need any particular areas with agency workers for that. I think that's probably enough for me, because I've probably gone over my time by about 3 minutes. So thanks. I want to say thank you for listening to me. I'm going to pass over to Roger and obviously Stuart as well, talk a bit about insights from Hackney. But I just want to say thank you again for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. From Hackney's perspective, I think what we've done is very, very strategic. So we have strategic meetings every week at different levels. And that's been good, because that's obviously supported the whole workforce strategy in terms of our response to COVID-19. I think one of the difficulties I think the council had at the beginning was the challenges around understanding the policy around furlough. I think the initial guidance wasn't clear. It was only the subsequent information that came out, and having discussions with Matrix, it was quite clear that obviously we're not going to be furloughing agency workers per se, but we're going to be supporting them in terms of a salary during this period of time. So when I say the furlough, the supporting of agency workers was pivotal, because clearly from our workforce, we have a number of agency workers, and it was important to try and get that strategy in place about how we were going to do that. The key thing for us was to see whether we could redeploy where possible. If we couldn't redeploy, then where managers identified either a closure in a particular service area, or people were suffering from COVID or shielding, etc., then we would then put them on the supporting 80% scheme. And I think the documentation from Matrix was very, very helpful, very, very clear in terms of how we would identify the workers, look at their rates, get it signed off, and put it into place. So what we've done in that process is to make that more central. So managers will identify the workers, it will get signed off at director level, and then I will do all the contracts or the agreements and get that sent off to Matrix. Matrix have produced reports to help us to understand what the spend is, how many workers have been affected, and the reasons. So I get those reports as and when I need them, and I will pass on to the senior management team. One of the key areas I think that there was a problem is in the unqualified social worker area. And that was a bit of a challenge, because they recognized that they needed more workers to work in that particular area. And again, Matrix have helped us in that process. We've had meetings with them, we've had meetings with the service managers to discuss what we could do to support that. And Matrix through the supply chain, are able to identify a number of workers that will help us in that particular area. I mean, what we've done as a council is look at ways how we can support agency workers. So we've extended our employee assistance program provision to them for at least a year, because we know the difficulties and the challenges that they face. many of the agency workers do work in frontline service areas. So they are working, dealing with issues around COVID. And so therefore we thought it was important for us to help, support where we can by putting in that program. So that program will allow them to get counselling if they need counselling. There may be group counselling sessions. There may be other things that their families can access through that particular program. So from a council's point of view, we recognise, we value our agency workforce, and therefore we are trying to do our best to try and help them through this difficult and challenging time. But we're hoping that at the end of it, we'll be able to retain and support them the best we can. I mean, we haven't really been affected as such by the number of workers that we anticipated that would go off, be supported by the 80% scheme. But there are service areas where that has been impacted. So we've tried to address those things, try to support them in the best way we can. Thank you. Anything else from me?
Thanks. Thanks, Roger. Really appreciate that, and thank you, Julian, for your sort of discussion around kind of what we've been doing as a wider sort of discussion. I think I'm just going through, seeing if we've got any comments here. So Suzanne Rudd sort of echoing Julian's comments, really, to say that we've seen a significant decline in new hiring activity, but a real push to retain existing workers since cover extension rates have gone up by over sort of 25%. And I think if we look at our customers across the piece, across the board, across the whole of the UK, we've had a sort of significant number of extensions, as you can expect, as any business would during this crisis, when there's talk of panic and all that sort of stuff. We kept a real close eye on our figures and our order numbers and placements and extensions and all that sort of stuff, as you probably would expect us to, and we were really surprised sort of for about a 2 or 3 week period where the average sort of extensions per day on a normal day would be somewhere in the region across our 105 customers. You'd probably have roughly about 120 to 150 extensions sort of on average, whereas when the crisis sort of hit, that number sort of hit to about 450 to 500 extensions a day, which was going through the platform. So a real peak for a period. Again, you know, you have to take those figures in isolation as well. It was at a time of the year when it's financial year end, so it's kind of difficult to understand what is exactly COVID and what is just normal BAU stuff, which you'd expect to see in your financials and new budgets and things like that. But some really interesting stats, which no doubt Tom and the marketing guys will sort of start to put some light around in the coming weeks when we come out of this side of things. So yeah, so that's some really interesting stuff. Does anyone else have any other questions that came through? Any other questions on the comments? Okay. Thanks. I guess from myself, it's just sort of wrap it up really to say sort of thank you ever so much for coming on the call. We are planning at a very early stage, and I spoke briefly to Leatham before this call, that we are planning to host a sort of panel discussion around probably some interesting stuff around the challenges that as local authorities, as HR people within local authorities might face coming out of this crisis, and whether that's sort of peaks within social care, whether that's things around sort of domestic violence, and how we can as HR sort of community, what sort of practical steps can be taken forward. Normal peaks around sort of summer and annual leave, and then people obviously not using annual leave, and how we're going to deal with those challenges when we come outside the other side of this as well. We're looking to host a panel sort of discussion, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Hopefully today's been very insightful and useful, and if anyone's got any questions, of course feel free to drop us a line, and we're happy to answer anyone's questions individually. That's enough for me. Over to you, Leatham.
Thank you very much, Chris and Julian and Roger, for that really insightful session. And for those of you out there who haven't checked into PPMA's view on what's going on throughout the coronavirus, we've got a brilliant resource hub, which you can check out on the website. It's got details about our approach and thoughts to the job retention scheme, health and well-being, behavioral science. There's a huge range of really useful information. We've got a very strong link into the Department of Public Health, and so any update which we get on a daily basis from them is reflected always on the resource hub. So I urge you to make use of that. It's fantastic. Also, just in terms of what's coming up in coming sessions, on Monday we will be joined by the brilliant Michael Byrne. He is from the Lived Experience Trauma Support Organisation. We're going to be focusing on mental health and emotional well-being during this time. And that's in the run-up to the Mental Health Week, which commences on the 18th of May. And on Monday the 18th, we're going to be joined by Andy Collins from the Mind Gym. We're going to have a reflection in terms of some ideas and thinking about engaging with your workforce around learning and development, that kind of stuff. So watch out for those. And each morning we're broadcasting from the PPMA a mindfulness session. This morning we had a brilliant mindful yoga experience. If any of you or your colleagues wish to make use of that, then feel free to check into that. And any ideas that you've got in terms of future broadcasts that you would like us to arrange, then do let us know. And just finally, you know, the whole experience that we've had over the last 7 months, the work of HR and OD professionals, and you know, picked up a lot of stories from around the country in terms of the real difference that each and every one of you have made. You know, goes to a big thank you from us all, and keep up the brilliant work. And to our sponsor Matrix today, thanks for your ongoing support, and we look forward to you joining us in a future event. And best of luck and lots of love to you all out there, whatever you've got in your day ahead, and see you soon. Thanks a lot. I'm just signing off.